Hello, Lily. Good evening.
Hi,
And good
JC.
evening,
Hi,
everyone,
everyone.
depending where you are. Nice to welcome you here for this short webinar that we have today. And as you have seen, we changed the time to have it at 7 p.m. So to give everyone the opportunity to join us at the end of your day, probably depending where you are. And yes, Lily, I would let you start.
Yeah, thank you, JC. So, hi, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. I'm going to share a presentation with you that we can go through together. So just bear with me.
Yeah, in the meantime, you will all receive the replay link with the next email. And if you have questions, you can place them in the Q&A box that you may find at the bottom of your screen. And we will be very pleased to answer them. Yes, we can see your screen now.
Okay, perfect. So today's webinar is about how to stay safe and covered when it matters most. So we're going to be talking about diving in remote locations, something for every diver, whether you're just getting started or you're an experienced diver. We need to think about what happens if something goes wrong and you're far away from getting help or being close to any sort of good medical facilities, let's say. So we're going to be looking at the risks of diving in remote locations. We're going to see how small injuries can become big problems. We're going to be looking at a case study about a DiveAssure member, a diver from Singapore. We're going to see what lessons we can take from this case, and then talk about how you can stay safe, how you can prevent injuries, and then talk about staying covered and the importance of staying covered. So let's take a look. So I made a little map here. You can see some of the the most remote diving locations, and quite typically some of the main ones that are on the hotspot list for top diving destinations like Maldives, Galapagos, New Tonga, anywhere where there's amazing things to see, but where we end up being quite far from any facilities that will keep us safe. So it can be one of the most rewarding experiences as a diver. You have untouched marine life, pristine reefs, a feeling for adventure, going so far away from your home country. But something that a lot of us perhaps don't consider, and something we definitely should bear in mind, is that it takes us quite far away from medical care. It puts us into locations where the weather can be very unpredictable and also very dangerous. And in many cases, there's no quick way to get help if things go wrong. So today we're going to be looking at how we can prepare and protect ourselves, and how coverage can make all the difference in an emergency. So the risks of remote diving: we have limited medical facilities on site. So sometimes we can be hours, even days from a medical facility that of a standard that we're used to, perhaps in our home country, that can give a proper level of treatment, especially when we need specific diving treatment like chamber treatments. There's many remote diving locations that don't have a chamber nearby, which is something that we perhaps would never have thought of, because you would just assume, wow, this is a top diving destination, they must have a chamber on every island. And it's not the case. Delayed emergency response: many of these remote locations don't even have emergency responders. They may have a volunteer doctor on site that can do a very quick first response, but not offer true emergency medical treatment. We have environmental hazards such as marine life, corals, weather, and of course we can get injured, we can have decompression sickness, and small things can escalate fast. So yeah, diving specific risks, as I just mentioned, decompression sickness, maybe a barotrauma, or an overexpansion injury. So when we're diving in remote locations, risk management becomes a key part of planning for that dive trip. We shouldn't just book our travel and go, hey, this is a great destination, I want to see this animal, this animal, this animal. Part of it should be, okay, I need this coverage. I need to get my comprehensive DiveAssure plan, whether you go for an accident plan or a full-on dive and travel plan. And you also want to be a little bit aware of how close certain facilities are to you and how you would need to react in the event of something happening. Small injuries can become big problems. So even minor cuts can escalate during a diving trip. Even something that probably, if you weren't diving, would heal fairly quickly on its own. The fact that if you were to repeatedly enter the water, perhaps especially on a liveaboard trip or sometimes where you're diving multiple times a day, the water, the humidity, keeping it wet, the climate, and also things like the sand. You're probably walking barefoot with flip-flops. There's a lot of dirt and bacteria getting into the cuts, even if you were to clean them at the end of the day. So this can cause a small injury to become a major problem. It's quite easy to be distracted by the diving, not want to miss out, and it can cause you to misjudge a situation and say, come on, it's not that bad, and when I get home in 2 weeks or next week, I'll sort it out then and see how it goes. If you ever see that an injury is not something that sort of scabs over in a day or two, you really need to consider having a day or two out of the water and ensure that it starts to heal properly before you continue your diving. And this is something that you will see. Oh, I just pushed the button. You will see in this case with a DiveAssure member. We had a DiveAssure member from Singapore who was diving in the Philippines. So she was living there. She was actually a diving professional living on a remote island in the Philippines. And so was very familiar with the area. During one dive, she got a small cut on her toe from some coral. And like probably most of us would, she just brushed it off, put a plaster on it, and just cleaned it and applied ointment on it sort of every evening when she finished work, but continued to dive. It didn't clear up, so then she decided to take a few days rest. And then it started to take a bit of a dangerous turn. Within a few days, her toe became swollen and painful. She developed symptoms like fever, nausea, circulation loss. She had black scabs, and she became quite weak and unresponsive. So the infection had started to turn into gangrene. This is something that doctors later confirmed when she saw a doctor, and it had spread quite rapidly, and they informed her that it could become fatal if left untreated. So just this very small cut from a coral very quickly within a few days became what could possibly be a fatal injury if she were to continue to ignore it. The local island she was on didn't have any hospital and didn't have a proper clinic. So they couldn't treat her condition and she needed to be evacuated immediately. At the same time, you know, everything comes, it never rains, but it pours. The typhoon Ursula at the time in the Philippines had destroyed the local boats, and any sort of means of her getting evacuated by the help of her dive center was impossible. So the only option was a helicopter evacuation to Cebu, where a hospital with where there was a hospital with a hyperbaric chamber. The fact that she got the helicopter evacuation to the hospital is what saved her life ultimately, but it was an extremely complex and expensive rescue. And she was very fortunate to have DiveAssure coverage. We handled the emergency evacuation and coordinated with the medical teams on site to ensure that she got the appropriate treatment and the best possible treatment. Without this coverage, she may not have come out of it as well, and she would have been left with a hefty bill. Once she got sort of the immediate emergency treatment in Cebu, she was then evacuated back to her home country in Singapore to receive her final treatment and to ensure that she fully recovered. She did actually end up having to have her foot amputated to save her life in the end. So that happened because unfortunately it got all left a little bit too long. But anyone could have taken that decision. It's way too easy to put things off, especially if you're in a remote area and you go, oh, I don't want to cause anyone any problems. I don't want to be the trouble that's going to try and, you know, get the dive center to take me by boat to the next island. And you know that it can be quite a complicated situation. So you just try to put things off and try to treat it yourself. And this is something that we really shouldn't risk and shouldn't play with. And the great thing about having a comprehensive coverage is that you do not need to play these games with your life. You can call DiveAssure and get fully consulted of what you should be doing, how you should handle the situation, and you will be taken care of. Oh, I've somehow got out of the full screen. What's this? Sorry. Technical problems, everyone.
Yeah. You're back.
Yeah, I'm back. There we go. Okay, so we have a quote from the dive center owner where this lady was working. She's a very great DiveAssure customer as well. So she sort of gave her side of the event, and she stated that she, as in the diver, went to the hospital and we contacted DiveAssure straight away. The contact in Cebu gave treatment, but not the correct treatment that was needed. You guys were amazing. You made it happen that she got medevaced to Singapore, as she's Singaporean, in order to get the right treatment. Sadly, she did lose her foot, but without you guys, she would have been much worse. You even stepped in, although it was a user error. If she had taken care of her cut immediately and not ignored it, it wouldn't have happened. For that, I can only give you 5 stars from the heart. And that's from Agate Biggs from Amun Ini. So let's take a look at what we as divers should learn from this case. And I put myself there as well as a diver and somebody who's often sort of, played down a small injury thinking it's all going to be fine. And I guess most of the times we're perhaps lucky. But small injuries in remote diving can become life-threatening. I mean, of course, they can become life-threatening anywhere, but when we are in a remote location where evacuation can take a long time or getting to a medical facility can take a long time, we shouldn't leave it until it becomes an emergency where time is of the essence, where time is really important. So ideally, we need to get it treated properly straight away. We should always know our options and have access to emergency evacuation options. And for this, I can only say, get covered. Have your DiveAssure coverage to make sure that there's a team of professionals that have your back, that can guide you and take you through the steps to get you to safety, to get you to a medical facility, and that also is going to cover the cost, because this type of operation is very costly. So the last point, insurance and coverage, are critical for remote diving. Personally, I think they're critical anywhere, even if you're in a country where you feel that you are covered without insurance. Personally, I think it's not worth diving without, but it's especially important when we dive in a remote location. So there's some tips here for staying safe, prevention tips. Of course, as divers that want to be sustainable, ecological, ideally the very first prevention tip would be to ensure we have great buoyancy and that we stay away from any sharp objects, corals, rocks, anything that can cut us under the water. But of course, even then, things can happen. And also we can still get cut on the boat or on any other situation. So we should always wear protective gear. It's quite nice in a tropical climate to dive in swimwear, to feel the freedom of not having a wetsuit on, not having to fight into your exposure suit. But wetsuits are great at protecting you against other things such as jellyfish stings. If you were to scrape against a coral, you would not be cut because the wetsuit would be protecting you. And the same for booties. Gloves is debatable. Some countries don't let you wear gloves, and gloves can almost encourage you to touch things you shouldn't be touching. But if you know that you're diving in an area where there's things that you might need to hold on to, especially in strong currents, then gloves can also be a big help. If you were to get cut, make sure to disinfect all cuts immediately. If you're unsure of what to do, at the dive center that you're diving with, dive center staff are trained in first and secondary aid. So there should be somebody on site that can help you. Avoid diving with open wounds as much as possible, because I always heard as a diver, yes, but it's salt water. It's going to actually help clean the wound and it's going to help disinfect. There's salt water and there's salt water. There's sterilized water that has salt added to it, or like a saline solution that will help clean and disinfect your wounds. But the salt water of the sea is not clean. There's lots of bacteria in there. There's plankton. There's many things in the water that can actually cause a bigger infection than you might already have. And the final thing would be to carry a first aid kit suitable for marine injuries. It is a good idea, absolutely, to not rely on the people you're diving with, the company you're diving with. If it fits into your spare diving kit, it's not a bad idea to have some first aid items with you so you can respond yourself and not be reliant on somebody else. Because if you were to have a situation in a remote area and perhaps they don't have anything to provide you with, then you could be really stuck. So again, this is important whether you're diving in remote locations or anywhere, to be honest. This is something that we should always consider, staying covered. We need diving insurance and we need coverage for evacuation. And luckily our DiveAssure plans, they cover emergency medical treatment and evacuation. The main points here, or the main costs we would have as divers, are hyperbaric chamber treatments. And this is one of the major things we think of when we think of a diver injury is decompression sickness or a pressure injury where you might need treatment in a hyperbaric chamber. Now, mostly hyperbaric chambers are private, especially if they are located in remote locations. They're very rarely government run or government funded, which means they are extremely costly. One session in a chamber can cost you between 1,500 euros and up to 5,000 euros per session, depending on the location. And I say this from experience. And most sort of treatments that you might need for something like decompression sickness, you would need more than 3, 4, maybe 5 treatments to recover. I mean, it can be way up there. It could take you weeks, and you could have multiple treatments, but it's very rare that you would only need one ride in a chamber. So, you can see already that it can be a major expense if you're not covered. We have emergency evacuation, whether air or sea. These can be difficult to organize and very costly. So even if money isn't an issue for you, you still should think about the organization part of it, because organizing an emergency evacuation, especially perhaps in a country where you don't speak the language, where you're not aware of the infrastructure, you don't know where you actually need to go, can be extremely difficult. So you want a professional team behind you to help organize this. So that's basically what we do. We have our DiveAssure emergency hotline, and if we need to help you organize an evacuation, then we're on it and we guide you through the steps and ensure that you get brought to the best facility that is located near you. Overseas medical expenses, again, depending on the location, they can be costly. And in remote locations, you might not be able to get the treatment you need close by. So again, if you were somewhere less remote, you might be able to just get treated on site, just take a taxi or get an ambulance. But when we're diving in remote locations, this isn't possible. And then suddenly you're looking at organizing a speedboat, organizing a seaplane, or a helicopter. So, JC, before I wrap it up, have you got anything you'd like to add?
No, I would say all good. It was very interesting presentation. And again, as we also discussed before together, in diving, you're always in buddy teams, at least on today, or I would say nowadays, everything is organized. Even if you go on a liveaboard, everything gets said in a nice briefing. Emergency and evacuation is monitored, tested quite widely. And being Swiss, if I go in the forest, and this happens a lot, you may go in the forest alone, go for a jogging, and then something happens and you are completely lost. Well, that's not different in the sea, but the difference is that in the diving, we are never alone. So which makes things really much better. But also, when we travel abroad, no matter where, we need to be covered, because you are not in your country, and if something happens, it becomes quite costly. And the first thing they will ask is your credit card to guarantee your treatment. And this can be really detrimental also for the whole experience. So it's better to be really taking care of way before, and hopefully nothing happens as well.
Thank you. Okay, well, I will say thank you to everyone for joining. If anyone has any questions, please, you're welcome to use the Q&A section in the webinar for the next couple of minutes before we say goodbye. But if no questions come in, then we
Sure,
will...
and we will send everyone, of course, the email with the replay link, and you will be invited to our new membership sections where you will see different webinars and new videos coming in the future. So that's something new that we have created with DiveAssure. So you're welcome to join and invite others, of course. This is something that is for everyone. And in some future webinars, we will also have some guest speakers. So we think we will have something quite interesting coming up very soon as well. So not only talking about, let's say, accident and prevention and insurance, but having also some good tips and suggestions for your dive holiday or your local dives. I would say thank you very much, Lily. And
okay.
Thank you everyone for joining, and we will see you very soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, JC. Speak to you soon. Bye.